The old warrior sat alone in his small room on the edge of the galaxy. His name was Kethver, and he had 4 arms that shook when he tried to hold things. His skin was gray and hard like stone, but it had many scars from old battles. The scars told stories he did not want to remember. Outside his window, the twin suns of Nexus 7 were setting. The orange light made long shadows on the walls of his room. Kethver looked at the holographic screen in front of him. It showed young Zelani, soldiers marching in perfect lines. They looked strong and proud. Their armor was shiny and new. They held their weapons high as they walked. The voice from the screen was loud and clear. Join the great war against the humans. Show them the power of the Zelani Empire. Victory will be ours. The young soldiers on the screen roared and clicked their mandibles. They sounded like they were ready to fight anything. Kethver made a sound deep in his throat. It was not a happy sound. He had heard these words before, many years ago. He had believed them too. Back then, he thought humans were weak and soft. The reports from the Empire said humans were slow and stupid. They said humans could not fight. Without their machines, how wrong they had been. The old warrior turned off the screen with one of his 4 hands. The room became quiet except for the soft hum of the life support systems. He walked to the window and looked out at the empty streets below. Most of the young Zelani on this world had already left to join the war. They all wanted to be heroes. They all wanted to kill humans. Kethver closed his compound eyes and tried to forget, but the memories came back anyway. They always came back when he was alone. He could still hear the sounds of battle. He could still smell the smoke and blood. He could still see the faces of the humans he had fought. The door to his room made a soft beeping sound. Someone was outside? Kethver opened his eyes and looked at the security screen. A young Zelani stood there, wearing the blue uniform of a military cadet. The young one had the same gray skin and 4 arms as Kethver, but his armor was bright. And unmarked, his compound eyes were bright with excitement. "Uncle Kethver," the young voice called through the door. "Please let me in. I have something important to ask you." Kethver knew this voice. It was his nephew, Zeftal. The young one was only 20 cycles old, barely an adult by Zelani standards. He had just finished his basic training and was ready to join the war. Kethver had been avoiding him for weeks, but he knew this day would come. The old warrior pressed a button, and the door slid open. Zeftal stepped inside, his movements quick and eager. He looked around the small room and saw the turned-off holographic screen. His mandibles clicked with disapproval. "Uncle, why do you not watch the war reports?" Zeftal asked. "Do you not care about our victory over the humans?" Kethver walked slowly to his chair and sat down. His old joints made soft popping sounds. As he moved, "Victory," he said in a quiet voice. "What do you know about victory, young one?" Zeftal stood straight and proud. "I know that our forces are winning on 12 worlds. I know that human technology is failing against our superior weapons. I know that their soldiers run when they see us coming." The old warrior looked at his nephew for a long moment. The young one believed every word he was saying. He had the same fire in his eyes that Kethver once had, the same certainty that the Empire was right and the humans were wrong. "Sit down," Kethver said, pointing to a chair across from him. "If you want to know about humans, I will tell you, but you will not like what you hear." Zeftal sat down but kept his back straight. "I want to hear your war stories, Uncle. Tell me about the battles you won. Tell me about the humans you killed." Kethver was quiet for a long time. He looked at his hands, seeing the scars that covered them. Each scar had a story. Each story was about a human who had fought him. Many of those humans were dead now, but they had not died easily. "I was like you once," Kethver said finally. "I believed what the Empire told us. I thought humans were weak because they were smaller than us. I thought they would surrender when they saw our strength." "But they did surrender," Zeftal said. "The reports say that human forces give up when they are outnumbered. Some reports lie," Kethver said. His voice was getting harder. "Some reports tell you what you want to hear, not what is true." The old warrior stood up and walked to a metal box in the corner of the room. He opened it with careful hands and pulled out a piece of twisted metal. It was blackened and bent, but Zeftel could see that it had once been part of a weapon. "This came from a human rifle," Kethver said, holding up the metal. "It was destroyed in the Battle of Meridian Valley." "Do you know what happened at Meridian Valley?" Zeftel shook his head. He had never heard of that battle. It was not in any of the victory reports he had seen. "It was my first real battle against humans," Kethver continued. "We had 200 warriors, all of them trained and ready. The humans had 30 soldiers in a small outpost. Our commanders told us it would be easy. They said we would be done before the sunset." The old warrior sat back down, still holding the piece of metal. "The battle lasted 3 days. When it was over, only 40 of us were left alive. The humans fought us with everything they had. They used their guns until they ran out of bullets. Then they used knives and clubs. When those broke, they used their hands and teeth." Zeftel stared at his uncle. "But uncle, that cannot be true. Humans are not that strong. They do not have natural weapons like us." "You are right," Kethver said. "They are not stronger than us. They do not have claws or a thick skin. But they have something else. Something that makes them more dangerous than any creature I have ever fought." "What do they have?" Zeftel asked. "They have the will to die for what they believe in," Kethver said. "They will keep fighting even when they know they cannot win. They will sacrifice themselves to hurt their enemies. They will choose death over surrender." The young Zalani shifted in his chair. "That sounds like madness, uncle." "Yes," Kethver said. "It is a kind of madness. But it is also the most terrifying thing a soldier can face. When you fight someone who is not afraid to die, you realize that you are afraid to live." Kethver put the piece of metal on the table between them. "I want to tell you about that battle, young one. I want to tell you about the humans I met there. But first, you must promise me something." "What must I?" "Promise? You must promise to listen to the whole story. Do not interrupt me. Do not tell me that I am wrong. Just listen and learn." Zeftel nodded slowly. He was starting to feel uncomfortable, but he was also curious. His uncle had never talked about the war before. "Good," Kethver said. "Then let me tell you about Meridian Valley. Let me tell you about the humans who taught me what real warfare looks like." The old warrior leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were looking at something far away. Something that happened long ago, but still felt like yesterday. "It began on a morning that looked just like this." "1," he said. "The suns were rising and we thought we were going to win an easy victory. We had no idea that we were about to learn the true meaning of fear." Kethver looked at his nephew and began to speak. His voice was low and steady, but Zeftel could hear the pain in it. "The Battle of Meridian Valley happened during the 3rd cycle of the war," Kethver said. "I was a squad leader then, young and full of pride. My company was called the Iron Claw, and we thought we were the best warriors in the Empire." The old warrior picked up the twisted piece of metal from the table and turned it over in his hands. "Our mission was simple. There was a human outpost in a valley on the planet, Kepler 442b. Intelligence reports said it was a small base with 30 human soldiers. Our job was to destroy it and kill everyone inside." Zeftel leaned forward in his chair. 30 humans. Against 200 Zalani? That should have been easy. "That is what we thought," Kethver said. "Our commanders told us the humans would probably surrender when they saw us coming. They said humans were cowards who only fought when they had better weapons and more soldiers." Kethver stood up and walked to the window. The suns were almost gone now, and the sky was turning dark. We landed our transport ships 5 miles from the human base. The plan was to surround them and attack at dawn. We would give them one chance to surrender, then we would finish them quickly. "What went wrong?" Zeftel asked. The old warrior turned back to his nephew. "Everything went wrong. But first, let me tell you about the humans we found there." Kethver sat down again and closed his eyes. The base was in a valley between 2 hills. It was made of metal and concrete, nothing special. From the outside, it looked weak. We could see the humans moving around inside through our scopes. They looked small and soft, just like the report said. The human commander was a sergeant named Jake Morrison. He was not tall, maybe 6 feet in their measurement. He had brown hair and scars on his face from other battles. When our commander sent a message telling him to surrender, Morrison sent back a message that I will never forget. "What did he say?" Zeftel asked. "He said, 'Come and take it.'" Kethver opened his eyes and looked at his nephew. "Just 4 words. No fear, no pleading, no offers to negotiate. Just a challenge," the old warrior continued his story. We attacked. At dawn, just as planned. Our first wave was 50 warriors, all armed with plasma rifles and combat armor. We expected the humans to run or hide. Instead, they opened fire immediately. "But their weapons were weaker than ours," Zeftel said. "The report said human projectile weapons could not pierce our armor. The reports were wrong about many things," Kethver said. "Yes, their bullets were smaller than our plasma bolts. But they had so many bullets. They fired continuously, never stopping. The sound was like thunder that never ended." Kethver stood up and began to pace around the room. "The first thing I learned about humans is that they are very good at using their environment. They had dug trenches and built walls. They had placed their weapons in smart positions. Every time we tried to advance, they hit us from a different direction. But we were stronger and faster," Zeftel protested. "Yes, we were stronger. But strength does not help when you cannot reach your enemy. The humans had studied our tactics. They knew how we liked to fight. They had prepared for everything we might do." The old warrior stopped pacing and looked directly at his nephew. "The second thing I learned about humans is that they never give up. When we destroyed one of their gun positions, they would move to another one. When we cut their communication lines, they used hand signals. When we damaged their weapons, they fixed them or found new ones." Kethver walked to the metal box and pulled out another object. It was a small device with wires and a blinking light. "This is a human medical scanner. I took it from their base after the battle. Do you know why I kept it?" Zeftel shook his head. "Because it belonged to a human medic named Lisa Torres. She was a small female, maybe 5.5 feet tall. She weighed less than one of my arms. But she taught me more about courage than any warrior I had ever met." The old warrior sat down and held the scanner carefully. "During the battle, many humans were wounded. Lisa Torres was their medic. Her job was to heal the injured soldiers. When the fighting got bad, her commander told her to retreat to the bunker where she would be safe. She refused." Zeftal stared at his uncle. "She refused an order from her commander? She said her soldiers needed her. She said she would not leave wounded men on the battlefield. So she stayed in the open, treating injuries while bullets and plasma bolts flew around her." Kethver's voice became quieter. I saw her through my scope. She was kneeling next to a wounded human soldier working on his injuries. 3 of my warriors were shooting at her position. She could have run to safety, but she did not move. She kept working on the wounded man. What happened to her? We overran their position eventually. Too many of us, not enough of them. When we reached the medical station, Lisa Torres was still there. She had been shot twice, but she was still alive. She was still trying to help a wounded soldier." The old warrior's hands began to shake as he held the scanner. Our squad leader, Vextel, walked up to her. He pointed his weapon at her head and told her to surrender. She looked up at him and said something in their language. I did not understand the words then, but I learned later what she said. "What did she say?" "She said, 'I am a medic, I do not surrender. I do not abandon my patients.'" Kethver looked at the scanner, then at his nephew. Then she pulled out a small explosive device. "A grenade, they call it." She held it up so we could see. Zeftel was completely silent now. Vextel told her to drop the grenade. He said we would let her live if she gave up. She smiled at him. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had already decided to die. Kethver put the scanner on the table. She said one more thing before she activated the grenade. She said, "Tell your friends that humans do not break." Then she pulled the pin. The room was quiet for a long moment. Zeftel could hear his own breathing. 7 of our warriors died in that explosion, Kethver continued. including Vextal. Lisa Torres, a medic who weighed less than half of what any of us weighed, killed 7 trained Zelani soldiers. She did it to protect wounded humans who could not protect themselves. That is not possible, Zeftal said quietly. I was there, Kethver said. I saw it happen. And that was not the worst thing I saw that day. The old warrior walked to the window again. There was another human, a soldier named Ben Clark. He was hit by plasma fire early in the battle. Both of his legs were broken. He could not walk. He should have been out of the fight. But he was not out of the fight. He crawled. For 2 hours, he crawled across the battlefield toward our ammunition storage area. He was bleeding, he was in pain, but he kept crawling. Why did he not call? For help? Because he was not trying to get help. He was trying to reach our explosives. He had a thermal detonator with him. He wanted to destroy our ammunition so we could not use it against his friends. Kethver turned back to his nephew. We saw him coming, of course. We shot at him many times, but he kept crawling. Even when we hit him again, he kept moving forward. He was like a machine that would not stop. Did he reach the ammunition? Yes, he reached it. And when he got there, he activated his detonator. The explosion destroyed half of our supplies and killed 15 more of our warriors. One human, barely alive, crippled and bleeding, took out 15 of us. Zeftal was shaking his head. Uncle, these stories cannot be true. Humans are not capable of such things. That is what I thought too, Kethver said. But I learned something that day. Humans are not just fighting for their empire or their territory. They are fighting for something much more important to them. What are they fighting for? They are fighting for each other. Every human soldier in that base was willing to die. To protect the others, they were not just following orders. They were protecting their family. The old warrior sat down heavily in his chair. The battle lasted 3 days. By the end, we had killed all 30 humans in the base. But it cost US 160 warriors. We lost more than 5 of our soldiers for every human we killed. At least we won, Zeftal said. Did we? Kethver asked. We took the base, yes. But the humans had already sent a message to their command. They had told them everything about our tactics and our weapons. Other human forces were ready for us. And the humans in that base, they achieved something too. They proved that humans would not surrender. They proved that every battle against them would be costly. They proved that we had underestimated our enemy. Kethver picked up the twisted piece of metal again. This came from Jake Morrison's rifle. After the battle, I found him in the command center. He had been shot 12 times, but he was still alive. He was still trying to operate the communications equipment. What did you do? I asked him why he did not surrender. Why he let his soldiers die when he could have saved them. He looked at me with those human eyes and said something I will never forget. What did he say? He said, because that is what soldiers do. We fight so others do not have to. Then he died. The room was quiet again. Zeftal stared at his uncle, trying to understand what he had heard. That was my first real battle against humans, Kethver said. It was not my last. But it was the one that taught me the truth about our enemy. They are not weak. They are not cowards. They are something much more dangerous than that. Zeftal sat in silence for a long time. He looked at the twisted metal on the table and tried to understand what his uncle had told him. Finally, he spoke. Uncle, surely that battle was unusual. Not all humans can fight like that. You said yourself. There were only 30 of them. Kethver made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was not happy. You think Meridian Valley was unusual? You think those 30 humans were special? He walked to the metal box again and pulled out another object. This one was a small piece of cloth with symbols on it. This is a human flag, Kethver said. It came from Firebase Delta. That was my second major battle against humans. If you think 30 humans were dangerous, let me tell you about what 200 humans can do. The old warrior held the flag carefully. The cloth was torn and stained, but the colors were still visible. Red, white, and blue stripes with stars. In one corner, Firebase Delta was on a planet called Zarian Prime. It was a human military base built on top of a hill. The humans had been there for 6 months, and they had built strong defenses. Walls, trenches, gun towers, everything they needed to hold the position. Zeftel leaned forward. How many Zelani attacked this base? 3,000 warriors from the 3rd Battle Fleet, the best soldiers in the Empire, with the newest weapons and armor. We had orbital support, air cover, and heavy artillery. The humans had 200 soldiers and whatever supplies they could carry. That should have been easy, Zeftel said. That is what our commanders thought. They said the battle would last 1 day. They said the humans would surrender when they saw our fleet in the sky. Kethver folded the flag and put it on the table next to the other objects. The battle lasted 16 days. 16 days? Zeftel's voice was high with surprise. 16 days of the hardest fighting I have ever seen. The humans were completely cut off. No supplies, no reinforcements, no help coming. They knew they were going to die, but they kept fighting anyway. Kethver began to pace again. The human commander was Colonel Ryan Hayes. He was older than most of the other humans, maybe 50 years old. He had gray hair and tired eyes, but when he spoke, his soldiers listened. What made him special? He was smart, very smart. Every time we tried a new attack, he had a defense ready. Every time we changed our tactics, he changed his. It was like fighting someone who could read our minds. The old warrior stopped pacing and looked at his nephew. On the first day, we attacked with 500 warriors. We thought we would break through their walls and end it quickly, but the humans had prepared surprises for us. What kind of surprises? They had dug tunnels under the ground leading to different parts of their base. When we attacked one wall, they would appear behind us from the tunnels. When we focused on the tunnels, they would attack from the walls. They were always 1 step ahead of us. Kethver sat down and rubbed his scarred hands together. On the second day, we brought in heavy weapons. Plasma cannons, missile launchers, everything we had. We pounded their base for 6 hours straight. When the smoke cleared, we thought they would all be dead. But they were not dead. No, they had built bunkers deep underground. They had moved their important equipment to safety, and they had prepared more surprises. When we advanced to take the base, they came out of hiding and hit us with everything they had. The old warrior's voice became quieter. That was when I first saw how humans adapt. Their big guns had been destroyed in our attack. Their communication systems were damaged. Half their equipment was broken, but they did not give up. What did they do? They improvised. They took broken pieces of their weapons and made new ones. They used metal from their destroyed buildings to make armor. They turned their cooking oil into slippery traps that made our soldiers fall. They used their medical supplies to make explosives. Zeftel shook his head. How is that possible? Humans are very good at solving problems. When something breaks, they fix it. When they do not have the right tool, they make one. When they cannot fight one way, they find another way. Kethver stood up and walked to the window. The sky was completely dark now, and stars were visible. On the 5th day, we tried to starve them out. We destroyed their food storage areas and cut off their water supply. We thought hunger would make them surrender. Did it work? No, the humans had hidden food and water in many different places. They rationed everything very carefully. They ate less and less each day, but they kept fighting. I saw human soldiers who were so thin they could barely stand, but they still fired their weapons. The old warrior turned back to his nephew. On the 8th day, we captured some of their wounded soldiers. Our commander thought we could use them as hostages. He sent a message to Colonel Hayes saying we would kill the prisoners if the humans did not surrender. What did Hayes say? He said, "Do what you must." We will not surrender? Kethver's voice was full of pain. Then he did something that shocked all of us. He ordered his soldiers to attack our position where we were holding the prisoners. Zeftel gasped. He attacked his own soldiers? Yes, he risked their lives to continue fighting. But here is the strange part. The wounded humans we had captured, they helped us fight against their own people. They grabbed weapons from our guards and started shooting at the attacking humans. I do not understand. Neither did we at first. But then we realized what was happening. The wounded humans were not helping us. They were helping their friends. They were making sure the attack would succeed, even if it meant they would die. Kethfer walked to the metal box and pulled out a small device. It was a human communication unit, damaged but still recognizable. This belonged to a human engineer named Pete Morgan. He lost his leg in an explosion on the 10th day. He should have been out of the fight. But he was not? No, he crawled to the Defense Control Center and operated the base's weapons systems. For 6 days, he controlled the guns and shields that protected the base. He never left his post even. When he was bleeding and in pain, the old warrior held up the communication device. On the last day, when we finally broke through their defenses, Pete Morgan was still at his station. He had been shot 3 times, but he was still working. He was trying to repair a damaged gun system when we found him. "What did you do?" I asked him why he did not surrender. Why he did not try to save his life. He looked at me and said, "Because my friends are counting on me." Then he activated a self-destruct charge and destroyed the entire control center. Zeftal was quiet for a long moment. "Uncle, these stories sound impossible. How can humans be so willing to die?" That is what I asked myself every day during that battle. But I learned the answer by watching them. Humans do not fight for their empire or their government. They fight for the humans standing next to them. They fight for their families and their friends. They fight for people they care about. Kethfer put the communication device on the table with the other objects. On the 16th day, we finally overran Firebase Delta. We had lost 800 warriors, but we had won. When we entered the base, we found Colonel Hayes in the command bunker. Was he alive? Yes, he was sitting at his desk, reading a letter. When he saw us, he put the letter down and stood up. He did not try to run or fight. He just stood there, waiting. What did he say? He said, "I assume you want me to surrender the base." I told him the base was already captured. He smiled and said, "Then I have done my job. My soldiers held you here for 16 days. That gave our fleet time to prepare for your next attack." The old warrior sat down heavily. That was when I realized the truth about Firebase Delta. The humans were not trying to win. They were trying to buy time. They knew they could not defeat 3,000 Zilani warriors, but they could delay us. They could make us waste time and resources. And it worked? Yes. While we were fighting at Firebase Delta, human forces were attacking our supply lines on other worlds. They were evacuating civilian populations from planets we planned to invade. They were building new defenses and gathering their fleets. Kethfer picked up the human flag again. Colonel Hayes had sacrificed his entire command to protect other humans he would never meet. 200 soldiers died so that millions of other humans could live. What happened to Hayes? He was executed according to military law. But before he died, he gave me this flag. He said, "This represents something your people do not understand. It represents the idea that some things are worth dying for." The old warrior looked at his nephew. That was when I began to understand that we were not fighting an ordinary enemy. We were fighting people who valued their principles more than their lives. People who would choose death over defeat. But, Uncle, we still won those battles. We took Meridian Valley and Firebase Delta. Did we win? Kethfer asked. Yes, we captured those positions, but think about the cost. At Meridian Valley we lost 5 soldiers for every human we killed. At Firebase Delta we lost 4 soldiers for every human. If every battle cost us that much, we would run out of soldiers before the humans ran out of worlds to defend. Zeftal was quiet, thinking about what his uncle had said. And there was something else, Kethfer continued. After each battle, the humans learned from their mistakes. They studied our tactics and found ways to counter them. They shared information with other human forces. Each battle made them stronger and smarter. Kethfer reached into the metal box one last time. His 4 hands shook as he pulled out a small object wrapped in black cloth. He unwrapped it slowly, revealing a human identification tag. The metal was scratched and dented, but the name was Still readable. Danny Wright. This belonged to the last human I ever fought, Kethver said. His voice was barely a whisper. His name was Danny Wright. He was 19 years old. Just a boy, really. Zeftel looked at the tag. Where did this battle happen? Outpost 7 on the moon of Gamma Centauri. It was supposed to be our final victory in that sector. After months of fighting, we had pushed the humans back to their last defensive position. One small base on a dead rock in space. The old warrior held the tag carefully as if it might break. The base was built into the side of a mountain. It was not big, maybe 200 humans inside, but it controlled the space lanes between 3 star systems. If we took it, we could cut off human supply lines to a dozen worlds. How many Zelani attacked? 5,000 warriors from the first. Assault fleet, our best soldiers, our newest weapons, our most experienced commanders. We had orbital bombardment ships, ground assault vehicles, everything we needed for total victory. Kethver stood up and walked to the center of the room. The attack began at dawn, local time. We bombarded the base from space for 6 hours. Our plasma cannons turned the mountain into molten rock. Our missile strikes shook the entire moon. When we finished, there was nothing left but smoke and rubble. The base was destroyed? We thought so. Our scans showed no life signs, no energy readings, no communications. The mountain had collapsed, burying everything underneath. Our commanders declared victory and ordered the ground assault to confirm the kill. The old warrior sat down again. I was part of the first wave that landed near the ruins. We expected to find bodies and wreckage. Instead, we found something impossible. What did you find? Nothing. The ruins were empty. There were no bodies, no equipment, no sign that humans had ever been there. It was like they had vanished into thin air. Zeftel leaned forward. Where did they go? We did not know. We searched for hours, digging through the rubble, scanning with every sensor we had. Our commanders were confused. How could 200 humans disappear from a mountain that had been completely destroyed? Kethver closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then, at sunset, we found out where they had gone. The ground beneath our feet began to shake. At first, we thought it was an earthquake. But then we heard something that made our blood freeze. What did you hear? Singing, human voices singing together. It was coming from underground, from somewhere beneath the ruins. The humans were still alive and they were singing. The old warrior opened his eyes and looked at his nephew. The humans had not just built their base on the mountain. They had built it inside the mountain. They had dug tunnels and chambers deep into the rock, far below where our bombs could reach. When we destroyed the surface base, they simply moved. Deeper underground. But how could they survive down there? They had prepared for siege warfare. They had stored food, water, air recyclers, everything they needed to live underground for months. They had moved all their important equipment to the deep chambers before our attack began. Kethver picked up the identification tag again. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what happened next. As we stood there listening to their singing, the humans began to attack us. How could they attack? They were trapped underground. They were not trapped. They had built escape tunnels that came up in different places around the mountain. While we were searching the ruins, they were moving through their tunnels, getting into position behind us. The old warrior's voice became harder. They attacked. US from inside the mountain. They would appear from hidden exits, fire their weapons, then disappear back underground before we could respond. They were like ghosts that could strike anywhere and vanish instantly. How did you fight ghosts? We could not. Every time we thought we had found their position, they would be somewhere else. Every time we blocked one tunnel, they would use another. They knew every passage, every chamber, every hiding place in that mountain. Kethver stood up and began to pace. For 3 days this continued. We lost soldiers every hour, but we could not hurt them. They would attack our supply lines, destroy our equipment, then disappear before we could strike back. Our commanders were going insane trying to fight an enemy they could not see. What did you do? Our fleet commander decided to end it. He ordered the bombardment ships to use fusion missiles. Not plasma cannons or conventional explosives, but fusion missiles. Enough firepower to crack the moon in half, Zeftel gasped. That would have killed everyone, including your own soldiers. Yes, but the commander was desperate. He gave us 4 hours to evacuate to a safe distance. Then he would turn the entire mountain into a crater 20 miles wide. Nothing could survive that, not even humans hiding in deep tunnels. The old warrior stopped pacing. But before the bombardment could begin, something happened that changed everything. The humans sent us a message. What kind of message? A voice. Transmission on an open channel, so everyone could hear it. The voice belonged to Danny Wright, the boy whose tag I am holding. He was the only human left alive in the base. Kethver sat down and held the tag with both hands. Danny told us that he was the last survivor. All the other humans in the base had been killed during our 3-day battle. He was alone in the mountain, wounded and dying. What did he want? He wanted to make a deal. He said he would surrender the base and give us all the human military secrets stored in their computers. All he wanted in exchange was safe passage for the human civilians on the nearby space stations. Zeftel frowned. But there were no human civilians in that sector. We had evacuated or captured them all weeks ago. That is what our commander told him. But Danny Wright said he did not believe us. He said humans never abandon their people, so there must be civilians hiding somewhere. He wanted proof that they were safe before he would surrender. The old warrior's hands began to shake again. Our commander was angry. He told Danny Wright that he had no right to make demands. He was one boy against 5,000 warriors. He had no weapons, no hope of rescue, no way to win. He should surrender immediately or be destroyed. What did Danny Wright say? He laughed. Actually laughed. Then he said something that I will. Remember until the day I die? He said, I may be alone, but I am not helpless. I have something that will interest you very much. Kethver put the tag on the table with the other objects. Then Danny Wright told us about the fusion reactor that powered the base. It was still working, even after all our attacks. It was deep in the mountain, in the lowest chamber of the complex. Hey! Fusion reactor could not threaten your fleet in space. No, but it could threaten us on the ground. Danny Wright had rigged the reactor to explode. Not a normal shutdown, but a complete fusion detonation. He said it would create a crater 20 miles wide and throw radioactive debris into space. Zeftel stared at his uncle. That would have killed him too. Yes, and he knew it. Danny Wright was willing to die to prevent us from taking the base. But he was also willing to make a deal if we could prove the civilians were safe. The old warrior walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Our commander tried to call his bluff. He said no human would really destroy himself just to deny us a victory. He said Danny Wright was lying about the reactor. Was he lying? No. To prove he was serious, Danny Wright detonated a small part of the reactor, just enough to create a minor explosion. The ground shook, and our sensors detected a radiation spike. The boy had really rigged a fusion bomb under our feet. Kethver turned back to his nephew. That was when our commander realized the truth. This 19-year-old human boy, alone and wounded in a destroyed base, had the power to kill all 5,000 of us, and he was calm about it. He spoke like he was discussing the weather, what happened next. Our commander tried to negotiate. He offered Danny Wright medical treatment, safe transport to human space, anything he wanted. All the boy had to do was disarm the reactor and surrender the base. The old warrior sat down again. Danny Wright said no. He said he did not trust U.S. to keep our word. He had read the reports about what happened to human prisoners. He knew we executed them. So what did he want? He wanted us to leave. All of us. He wanted our entire fleet to withdraw from the system and never come back. He said if we did that, he would disarm the reactor and the base would be ours. Zeftel shook his head. That is impossible. 5,000 warriors withdrawing because one human boy told them to. That is what our commander said. But Danny Wright had an answer for that too. He said he did not expect us to leave because he asked Nuzley. He said we would leave because we were afraid of him. Afraid of one human? Yes, because Danny Wright represented something that terrified our commanders more than any weapon. He represented the fact that humans would never truly surrender. Even when they were beaten, even when they were alone, even when they were dying, they would still find a way to hurt us. Kethver picked up the tag again. Danny Wright sat in that reactor chamber for 6 hours, with his finger on the detonator. While our commanders argued about what to do, he never moved. The room was quiet for a long time. Zeftel stared at the objects on the table while his uncle sat in his chair looking tired and old. The young Zelani tried to understand everything he had heard, but it seemed impossible. "Uncle," Zeftel said finally, "these stories you have told me, are they all true?" Kethver looked at his nephew with sad eyes. "Every word. I wish they were not, but they are. I have the scars to prove it. I have the nightmares to remind me. And I have these objects to show that the humans I fought were real people, not monsters from a bad dream." "But the reports on. The hologram said we are winning the war. They said human forces are retreating on all fronts. Some reports are true. Others are lies told to keep young soldiers like you willing to fight." Kethver picked up the twisted piece of metal from Jake Morrison's rifle. "Yes, we have taken human worlds. Yes, we have destroyed human fleets, but look at the cost." The old warrior stood up and walked to a drawer. He pulled out a datapad and showed it to his nephew. "These are the real casualty reports, not the ones they show on the public broadcasts. For every human world we conquer, we lose 50,000 Zelani soldiers. For every human fleet we destroy, we lose 2 of our own." Zeftal took the datapad and read the numbers. His compound eyes grew wide. "This cannot be right. These numbers say we have lost over half our military in the past 5 years? Now you begin to understand, we are not winning this war. We are bleeding to death, one battle at a time. The humans are dying too, but they are taking so many of us with them that soon we will have no soldiers left to fight." Kethver took the datapad back and put it away. "And that is not the worst part. The worst part is what this war is doing to our people." "What do you mean?" "I mean that good Zelani soldiers are becoming afraid to fight. I mean that our commanders are making desperate decisions because they know the truth about our losses. I mean that our empire is starting to crack under the pressure of fighting an enemy that will not surrender." The old warrior sat down again. "Let me tell you what I have seen in the past 10 years since I stopped fighting. I have seen young soldiers return from battle with their minds broken. I have seen proud warriors refuse to speak about what they experienced fighting humans. I have seen entire battalions request transfer to non-combat duties rather than face human defenders again. Why are they so afraid? Because fighting humans changes you. When you fight an enemy who will never surrender, who will turn themselves into weapons, who will sacrifice everything to hurt you, it makes you question everything you believe about warfare." Kethver picked up the medical scanner that had belonged to Lisa Torres. "We Zelani have always fought wars in a certain way. We fight until one side surrenders, then we make peace and move on. We understand that soldiers fight for their empire, but they also want to go home to their families. That is reasonable. Yes, it is reasonable. But humans do not fight reasonably. They fight as if every battle is the last battle they will ever fight. They fight as if surrender is not possible. They fight as if their cause is more important than their lives." The old warrior put down the scanner and looked at his nephew. "Do you know what happens to an army when it fights people like that? It starts to break down. Not because the soldiers are weak, but because they begin to understand that they are fighting people who are fundamentally different from them." "Different how? Different in their willingness to sacrifice?" "We Zelani value our lives. We fight bravely, but we also want to survive to enjoy our victories. Humans seem to care more about winning than surviving. They would rather die victorious than live defeated." Kethver stood up and walked to the communication console near the window. 3 months ago, I received a message from my old commander, General Thrakval. He wanted to know if I would consider returning to active duty. The Empire needs experienced officers who understand how humans fight. What did you tell him? I told him the truth. I said that no one truly understands how humans fight, because human warfare is not about tactics or strategy. It is about will. And human will is something that cannot be broken by force. The old warrior activated the console and showed his nephew a holographic display. It was a map of the galaxy showing human and Zilani territory. Look at this map. Do you see the pattern? Zeftal studied the display. I see that we control more worlds than the humans do. Yes, but look closer. Look at what has happened to the worlds we have conquered. The young Zilani looked more carefully. He saw that many of the worlds marked as Zilani territory had warning symbols next to them. What do these symbols mean? They mean those worlds are not really under our control. Yes, we have military bases there. Yes, we have destroyed the human governments. But human resistance groups are still active. They are still fighting us, even on worlds we conquered years ago. Kethver changed the display to show casualty reports. Every day, humans on these conquered worlds attack our bases, sabotage our equipment, and kill our soldiers. They do not have armies or fleets anymore, but they keep fighting anyway. How is that possible? Because humans do not think like we do. When we conquer a Zilani world, the people accept defeat and try to make the best of their situation. When we conquer a human world, the people go underground and keep fighting. They teach their children to fight. They pass down hatred of us from generation to generation. The old warrior turned off the display and sat down. I have read reports from our occupation forces. They say that human children as young as 10 years old are building bombs and planting them in our bases. Human grandparents who can barely walk are passing intelligence to resistance groups. Entire families are willing to die rather than cooperate with us. That is madness. Yes, it is a kind of madness. But it is also the reason we cannot win this war. Every human world we conquer becomes a source of problems for us. We have to keep large numbers of soldiers there just to maintain control. Those soldiers cannot be used to attack new human worlds. Kethver picked up the flag from Firebase Delta. Meanwhile, humans are using their unconquered worlds to build new fleets and train new soldiers. They are learning from every battle, adapting their tactics, and becoming harder to defeat. But surely they must be running out of soldiers too. That is what our commanders thought. But humans seem to have an unlimited supply of people willing to fight. Every time we kill one human soldier, 2 more take his place. Every time we destroy a human fleet, they build a bigger one. The old warrior unfolded the flag and spread it on the table. Do you know what this flag represents, young one? It is a human symbol, their national banner. It is more than that. It represents an idea. The idea that some things are worth dying for. The idea that freedom is more important than life. The idea that no one has the right to rule over others without their consent. Kethver looked directly at his nephew. Our empire is built on the idea that the strong have the right to rule the weak. We conquer other species because we are more powerful than they are. We have never faced a species that rejected this basic principle. Are you saying the humans are right and we are wrong? I am saying that it does not matter who is right or wrong. What matters is that humans believe they are right, and they are willing to die for their beliefs. That makes them impossible to conquer. The old warrior folded the flag carefully. 10 years ago, I thought this war would be over in a few more cycles. I thought humans would eventually realize they could not win and would surrender. But now I understand that humans will never surrender. They would rather be extinct than conquered. Then what will happen? One of 3 things. Either we will kill every last human in the galaxy, or they will kill every last Zilani. Or we will both destroy ourselves fighting each other. Kethver walked to the metal box and began putting the objects back inside. I hope for a 4th possibility, but I do not think it will happen. What 4th possibility? That one side or the other will be wise enough to stop fighting before we destroy each other completely. But I do not see that happening. Our empire cannot admit that it was wrong to start this war. The humans cannot forgive us for what we have done to their people. The old warrior closed the box and locked it. That is why I do not want you to join this war, Zeftal. Not because I think you will be killed, though you probably will be. But because this war is going to destroy both our species, and I do not want you to be part of that destruction. Zeftel sat quietly for a long time, thinking about everything his uncle had told him. Finally, he spoke. Uncle, if what you say is true, then what should I do? I am a Zilani citizen. I have a duty to serve my empire. You have a duty to serve your people, yes. But you also have a duty to think about what is best for them. Is it best for the Zilani people to continue this war until we are all dead? Or would it be better to find another way? What other way is there? Kethver walked to the communication console again. There are some of us, veterans, who have fought humans and survived, who believe this war must end. We meet in secret, we share information. We try to find ways to convince our leaders that this path leads only to destruction. That sounds like treason. Perhaps it is. But is it more treasonous to oppose a war that will destroy your people, or to support a war that will destroy your people? Which action truly serves the Empire?